On today's episode of SDN, we're discussing getting home fast when the fecal matter hits the rotary oscillation device.
This survival dispatch video is brought to you by Nutrient Survival. Nourish your body, power your mind.
And we're back. Mike, do you want to kick us off today?
Sure, no problem. So we're talking about getting home fast, right? And the planning process for such, like I'm getting ready to go on this 1,500-mile trip, and the entire thing, I'm taking the opportunity to run this as an exercise for a get home exercise.
Right on.
So, and I talked about that with Mike Glover the other day.
That's
as well.
awesome.
A couple of points that we came up with on this whole thing. You've got to do a lot of work in advance on this. And me and my partner, we're doing a whole lot of stuff now because, planning in advance helps you to be able to move forward and determine exactly what's happening. So it's plan. Couple of rules for long range get homes. Jump in there anytime on this if you want to. First, a couple of assumptions that you automatically have to have. One, do not rely on government assistance. Don't think, oh, well, the government's going to sort me out. No, they're not. Okay. You have to assume that you're not going to have any assistance. Don't rely on the grid. Okay. And what does that mean? Well, that means that all the fuel stations that are tied to the grid, they may not be available. Okay. So you got to have contingencies based on that. All right. And
So
then
are you thinking like the grid being down from an EMP or because it was attacked or hacked, or what do you think?
The scenario that we're working on right now is a widespread natural disaster followed by widespread civil unrest as a result of it, right? So that's basically going to wind up shutting down, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much everything west of the Alabama-Mississippi border for the most part, right? And everything west of there, all the way out to the Rockies, that's all going to be screwed up, shut down. All right. We don't have to have a specific scenario on that. But what I'm saying is, in this case, fecal matter has struck the rotary oscillation device. All right. And we're going to have problems with logistics. That's what I was looking at here, was determining tripwire scenarios. All right. What is it that's going to cause me to stop what I'm doing, which is, the job that we're going to be on out there in Wyoming? What is it that's going to cause me to say, that's it, we're all going home? All right. So you got to find, of course, your most likely scenarios, right? EMP is such a low probability that I just don't even plan around that anymore. I really don't. I mean, it's a very low probability. I'm going to plan for all the likely things. Okay. Natural disasters happen. Civil unrest happens. Financial downturns and collapses. Those things happen all the time. They're right there in our faces.
Supply chain failing, all those
right,
things.
exactly. So you got to be realistic about your scenarios for starters. And those scenarios are going to drive your timelines, and they're going to drive your routes. Okay. So as far as your timelines go, that determines how fast I need to get home. Okay. Now, while I can drive 1,500 miles in one fell swoop, you go ahead, if I get a case of monsters, I can do it. My my decision-making process is going to be gone to hell after the first 1,000 miles. I'm
been there, done that.
Yeah, that's bad. I mean, I drove from Central Texas all the way to LA one time with a case of with a 6-pack of Jolt Cola, if you remember that stuff.
I do, actually.
Yeah, that was bad. I slept for 2 days when I got there. It was awful.
In Texas, they would refer to that as a fur piece.
Yeah, that was ways. Yeah, absolutely. So, but like I was saying, so your scenarios also, that's gonna drive your routes. So if say Denver, my intelligence says that Denver has gone into complete anarchy, well, I'm probably not going to go south from where I am in Wyoming, right? But, of I mean, just for example, maybe Lincoln, Nebraska is up in flame because of, civil disruption. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. So that's going to drive what routes you're going to wind up taking. All right. So realistic scenarios are what you need to have. Intelligence is a thing. Okay. So
Amen.
you need to be keeping an eye on intelligence, because that all is going to drive your routes. And
So
then it comes.
maybe for clarity's sake, I mean, you've got this big trip coming up to Wyoming and you'll be there for some period of time, but we're speaking in the broader sense as well in this episode of getting home fast, after the shit hits the fan. So you've got a macro example going on of Wyoming back to Alabama,
Right.
but the idea is, you'll drop some intelligence on us today as well for people who are, work 15, 20 miles from home, how they get
Right.
home quickly. Right. Okay.
Right. So the macro drives the micro,
Okay.
as always. Right. So, and the process for all this is essentially the same. Okay. I've got good friends that work in the Frisco Bay Area, but live 70 miles away. Man, that is a get home scenario if I have ever seen one, right there.
For
Especially
sure.
since their only way to and from work is public transportation.
Wow. Okay.
Can't rely on that. Cannot
Yeah.
rely on that at all. So, what does it all come down to? Plan, plan, plan.
Yeah.
That's it. You got a plan. The more planning you do in advance, right? Sit down, work the plans, look at all the contingency, and it's always backwards planning. Okay, I've gotten home. How do I get there?
Okay.
Step by step by step. And then in the process, how would I stop myself from going from point A to point Z? And then now that I've determined there's a problem with that, how do I get around that? And that's where you start building your alternates and your contingencies.
Gotcha.
Right. So the first thing that I did on this, looking at my list up here, is my nav plan. Navigation, that's your key thing, right? Navigation, that's where you get your routes, and that of course is going to be a pace plan. All right, your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. That's the routes that you're going to do. So of course you want hard and electronic maps. Electronic maps are great as long as you're able to use them, right?
Right.
If you can have offline maps already loaded up on your phone,
Yeah.
man, that's great. Okay, use them while you can use them. Don't rely on them exclusively, though.
For
All
sure.
right, I love my hard copy maps, and as a matter of fact, I just I put my money where my mouth was. I spent a few hours going to every state in the union online, going to either their Department of Transportation or their Department of Tourism, and you can order hard copy road maps of every state in the union from there
Okay.
for free.
I didn't know that.
And they're still mailing them in to me. I'm getting them in. Now, you're going to wind up having to give them some information, and you're probably going to have to go into your email and go unsubscribe. Okay.
Right.
But whatever, right? I'm getting all these hard copy maps.
That's
So
awesome.
you can do that. These are things that can be done. Not to mention I have a tendency to stop at welcome tourist spots at borders. Yeah, those hard and electronic maps. Then do our map recon. Okay. So the map recon is going from point A all the way to point Z on your map. What are you looking for on that map recon? You've laid out your primary route. You're looking for all those things that are going to get in your way. Like I said, you're going back, you're doing your backwards planning. So I'm looking for choke points. I'm looking for major physical barriers that are
So
gonna get in my way.
give us an example of a choke point.
Okay, so great. Funny you should ask. Okay, example of a choke point. Buddy of mine, like I said, my buddy out there in the Bay Area, he has got several bridges that he's going to wind up having to cross.
Okay.
Okay, every single one of those bridges is a choke point. All right.
Fair enough.
That's a choke point. That is that area that you are funneled down to where you're probably going to have to take that route. A lot of the time, you're going to have most of your choke points at the front end and at the tail end. Okay, areas that
Okay.
you are not going to be able to go around as easily. Now,
Gotcha.
a choke point, doesn't necessarily have to be a physical thing. Choke points could also be, say, the National Guard has got an area like we discussed on your nuke bug out video,
Right.
right? Where, say, the National Guard closes down certain portions of the area because they're trying to limit the spread of contamination. Okay, so those checkpoints,
Gotcha.
that could be a choke point as well. So you also need to start looking at congestion times in that area, right? So you may have a route,
Mhm.
that you want to take, but if it's congested 5-6 hours a day, or God help you, if you have to go through someplace like Atlanta or Nashville or LA or something like that, man, you gotta come up with a lot of alternate routes. You really, really do, because
Yeah.
you're gonna get stuck.
Yeah. We used to always say that rush hour starts in Dallas Fort Worth at 12 a.m. and ends at 11:59 p.m.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, absolutely. So if you've done your map recon, the best thing that you can possibly do, especially if it's a get home from work scenario,
Okay.
if you've got that, do a physical recon of those routes. Go out, drive those areas, get a good look at them, and don't just drive those areas one way, drive it both directions.
Okay.
Okay. I like running an audio recorder. If I don't have a partner with me to be
Okay.
writing stuff down, I'll be running an audio recorder, and I'll say, okay, potential choke point here, potential choke point here, security point, or security vulnerability point. Like if I see an area that is a a real potential for the possibility of an ambush or getting surrounded or something like that, yeah, that's something that you're going to want to know. Even if it's not germane to the scenario that you're in, it's something that you want to look for.
So give me an example of that, an example of a choke point where you could potentially be ambushed.
Okay, so say you've got to move across, God help you, you've got to move across a metro.
Okay.
Okay. And you know for a fact that you're not going to be able to stay on the main highway. Like, God knows you're not going to be able to stay on the 75, 85 going through Atlanta,
Okay.
right? You're going to
Yeah.
have to get off of that. So
Right.
if you're going through some of the surface streets, right, one of your security, a security concern area might be really bad neighborhood.
Hmm.
Okay. So that's a security concern area.
Okay.
All right. Another point might be if you're going into an area with, you know, heaven knows there's just plain stupid people out there. And maybe these idiots are starting to think, right off the bat, oh, maybe I can start taking a toll from everybody that's going to try and come through our small town.
Okay. Like
Okay.
bands of marauders.
Or just packs of idiots,
Okay.
because we got plenty of those. We don't even need to
Right.
put another name on them other than packs of
Right.
idiots. Okay. So just things, and it's nothing but forward thinking. It's abstract forward thinking. You're pulling up and you're like, okay, this is an easy spot for me to get, because there's a lot of trees on both sides and this is the only way for me to go. Right. All they got to do is be able to just park a truck sideways across the road, and I can't get into there. Right. So, or I
So,
can't go any further.
yeah, you just made me think, when you mentioned metro and the stuff you're discussing, if you're coming out of the Orlando metro area, when you get to Sanford on I-4 and you have to cross the St. Johns River for no reason whatsoever, traffic always gets bottlenecked up at that spot. There's no reduction in lanes, there's no exits, there's no on ramps. It just seems like as soon as everybody gets on that stretch, everything slows down. It just occurred to me. I mean, there's no way around it. You can
Yep.
jump in the river and swim with the gators if you want.
I mean, if you want.
Not really, but
Yeah, not really. So, and the big thing that we did, this kind of came from SEER, was determining safe havens along your routes. So, and that's especially a big thing for me on this long trip, is determining safe havens. Now, if you're just trying to get home from work and it's, say, 60 miles,
okay.
all right, you might still want to identify a couple of safe havens. And a safe haven could be a friend's house, it could be a friendly coworker, heck, it could be a nice deserted patch of woods that you think that you're going to be able to hunker down in and get a little bit of rest. Preferably, safe haven though would be someplace with a great security situation so that you can get into there, you can rest, you can catch up on your sleep, you can hydrate, you might be able to replenish a couple supplies, things like that.
So shameless plug, part of the Survival Dispatch Insider memberships is the opportunity to go to a third party, get a discount on a background check on yourself, and then send us just confirmation of your name and no criminal record. And then going into a list of people who are willing to help other SDI members. There's some great safe havens right there as we build this out across the country.
Oh yeah, and that is exactly how I built mine. It's people that I've either done prepping stuff with, I've done teaching with, I served in the military with, or their family. Because if you weren't doing if you weren't doing time with me, you ain't doing crime with me. So that's your nav plan in a nutshell. Then the next most important thing, your transport and mobility plan, and that's all broken down based upon your nav. Okay. So what's going to be your primary vehicle? What's going to be your alternate vehicle? Things like that. What's your breakdown plan? What's your recovery plan? Do you have recovery gear? Anything like that? And I don't want to get too deep into it just because.
But go ahead and give us an example there of recovery gear.
So recovery gear, and JJ, I mean, he just goes into this really, really well. When he broke down his breaks down his Jeep and went through his bug out process, you should probably link that in here, because I'll tell you what, it was a great layout. Having you've got to have a winch on your vehicle if you possibly can, but at the bare minimum, have an understanding of how to be able to get yourself out of a situation where you're stuck. Have a couple of skills, get with some overlanding buddies and have them show you how to get your vehicle out when it's stuck, right? And it doesn't have to be snow on the ground. The grass could be wet.
Well, I mean, you live in a part of the country that's pretty similar to where our cabin is in North Georgia in the mountains. And, we're in a very rural location. People in our area, including us, we don't go anywhere without a chainsaw in the truck.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not uncommon to get down a side road or a mountain access road that you ain't going to turn around. And if there's a tree down, you're your own first responder.
Right, exactly. Plus you got to have tow straps, you got to have or recovery straps, you have some dynamic line, some turnbuckles, things like that. I mean, you need these things. And this is something that you and I discussed heavily on your nuke bug out. You have one spare tire on your vehicles. Right? I learned the hard way. Always have, however many tires you have on a vehicle or a platform, have 50% of those in spare tires, because man, there is very few things in this world that suck like replacing one spare tire and then replacing one tire that's flat and then look up and realize you have two flats. And say you drive through one of those security hazard zones, and they've got nails or caltrops or something like that on the side of the road, right? You blow two tires on one side, you got a problem.
So I don't recall the official term for it, but there's this phenomena where somebody mentions something to you and all of a sudden you see it everywhere, right? And because now you're in tune to it. So when you mention that, as far as, if you got a four-wheeler, which is what the semi drivers call cars and pickup trucks, having two spare tires, there's another laptop sitting beside me that runs the TV here, and I've always got something playing in the background, and I can't remember who it was for the life of me earlier today, but the person said, if you want to equip your vehicle properly, make sure you have 50% of the tires. And I thought, holy crap, that's a Mike Sterlingism right there.
I'm telling you, man, there is, man, and have those tires available. There is no self-loathing in this world like being stuck on the side of the road in Ramadi with people taking pot shots at you and having
Right.
over 300 pounds of gear sitting on top of your one spare tire.
Golly.
There
Yeah,
is no self-loathing in this world like that.
I bet. Just
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. So
Great, regardless, great advice.
here's another thing. The jacks that come in most people's vehicles, most people don't even know how to freaking use them, but they're
True.
garbage. They're
Yes.
garbage. Those little tiny scissor jacks, or maybe the bottle
Mhm.
jacks. No, I replace mine out with a floor jack.
Nice.
It's bigger. It takes up space, but you know what? I can jack my truck up like
Yeah,
that
for
without a
sure.
whole heck of a lot of calories expended.
Good
So
advice.
yeah, so that's a thing. Let's see, your fuel and power plan. The fuel and power plan is probably one of the biggest things that you're going to have to do. So my partner and I, we sat down and we determined what our nominal gas mileage is on the highway. Now I can get, example, I can get 17 and a half miles per gallon out on the
Okay.
highway if I'm doing real good, and that's in a loaded down truck, right? That's not bad,
Not
right? In
bad
my
at all.
Toyota. But I don't calculate based on that for this. For this, I'm calculating more of a worst case scenario. So I calculate based on 16 miles per gallon.
Okay.
Okay. Because you're going to have slowdowns, stops, things like that. You're going to have to take alternates. You're going to have to hop off the road. You're going to wind up just sitting from time to time. Okay. So I plan on my gas mileage being lower.
You know, that comment of sitting there, every single person I know who's had the opportunity to try an e-bike has fallen in love with it. And we're talking people, you know, who you would not think would have taken a liking to them. And we had one sent to us. We don't have it anymore. It went back to the company, but it was a folding e-bike.
Right.
And so one of our buddies went out and bought one because he could fold it up and put it in his Tesla of all vehicles. And that's his alternate way to get home if the roads are plugged up.
I mean, it's a solid plan, man. It really is. It's a solid plan. And that's that's part of my part of the pack out plan on this whole thing.
Okay.
So one, of course, like I said, fuel and power, we're gonna determine what the full range of your vehicle is gonna be, right?
Okay.
Realistically speaking, not oh, I know that I can get 650 miles on this thing. Okay. Sure, we're gonna get 650 miles on that. Let's try to get that, but realistically, we're just not going to be able to do that. Not in a situation like this with other people on the road doing crazy stuff.
Sure.
We set a hard limit on here. We plan to tank up with 100 miles remaining in the 100 miles of fuel remaining in the tank.
Okay.
Whenever possible. And I mean, I've got a 38-gallon tank on my truck, so I can go a ways. And then you need to plan for supplemental and emergency containers of fuel carried, right? And that's if you've got an external fuel tank mounted up in the back of a pickup, or if you've just got fuel cans, a couple of 5-gallon fuel jugs tossed into the back of your car or your minivan or whatever. Okay. But you should plan on having an additional 150 miles minimum. And that's your emergency fuel. That's not your, okay, we're just going to use this at every leg. No, that's your emergency fuel in case that 100 miles, or when you get to your predetermined fueling point, say that truck stop's been burned to the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're making me think of I-10 in West Texas. When it says stop now and get fuel,
right,
better stop now and get fuel.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I'm having to go across Nebraska and some really long distances without fuel. So I want to make sure that I'm going to have enough fuel. So, I mean, I carry 20 gallons in the back of my truck.
Cool.
And I think you had like 5
Yeah.
in yours when
Not
you guys
enough.
did your exercise. Yeah, you didn't have enough. Yeah.
Not enough.
Minimum of 2 cans, as far as I'm concerned, minimum
Okay.
of 10 gallons worth of juice. Of course, your mileage may vary. So I always say 150 miles.
Okay.
worth of fuel. And then I also suggest an alternate method to be able to collect fuel. I carry a gas tapper system. Yeah. And the gas tappers are outstanding, man. I mean, that is a foolproof method to be able to get into another vehicle. And if you've got broken down vehicles all over the sides of the road, you may need to go ahead and scavenge fuel. All right.
So how does a gas tapper function? Just
So the
for
gas
people who aren't
tapper,
familiar with it.
right. So the gas tapper is it is an electric pump and series of hoses, and you need to actually spend a little bit of time with it and with the tutorial videos that you
Okay.
can get on their site. Real cool little system. And it has a series of hoses and shims. So a modern gas tank, getting into a modern gas tank, the manufacturers have built a whole lot of things into those to
They have.
keep people from just siphoning your gas,
True.
right? So this comes with a bunch of rigid and semi-rigid tubes that you can slide down into there, get past all those points, and then just snake your regular tube right through the middle of that, so
Wow.
that you can pull fuel out of a tank and not have to crawl underneath it with, a bowl and a Phillips head screwdriver and a hammer. That's a bad method. Don't do that. That's just, yeah, it doesn't work out real good for anybody involved. So the gas tappers are great, and you can either run it off of a 12-volt connection off your vehicle,
Okay.
or you can also get the external lithium ion battery pack that comes with it as well. And man, it's great. I can usually do about 5 gallons about every 10 minutes.
Well, what's the price on these things?
They're under $300 as far as I remember. I want
Okay.
to say like 260, 280, something like that. They're great. They're just wonderful little sets. And man, I don't go anywhere without mine. It's great. And even if
Awesome.
so, I know a couple of guys who have got bad backs, right? So they've got fuel tanks up in the back of their truck. They use their gas tapper as a transfer for being able to get the gas out of there. Because I don't know if you've ever stood there holding a 5-gallon gas tank. That's 40 pounds,
Yeah,
and
it's
you're having to
fun.
hold it up fairly high
Been
to
there
be able to, yeah, I mean, you're going to spill stuff, you make a
for sure.
mess, right? And you get pretty damn tired doing it. So the best thing about that is, yeah, just plug this thing straight into your fuel tank,
Right
plug
on.
it into the gas cans, just use it as a transfer pump, man. It
Awesome.
works. Yeah, and it's quiet too. That's something that's really nice about it. They're
Did,
pretty damn quiet.
did I see that they um also recommend that their product can be used to fetch water?
So no, you do not want to mix
No, but as a
fuel
separate
and
unit or something like that.
right, yeah. So they make a different unit that does not have a fuel rated pump. It's a lot cheaper,
Okay.
and I think it's called the water tapper or something like that. Anyway, and it's got slightly larger lines.
Okay.
Yeah, they make a water one, like I said, but it doesn't have a fuel related or fuel rated pump.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and the fuel rated pumps are the ones specifically built so that the seals won't break down with petroleums in it,
Okay.
and it's inherently not going to have a spark and blow up the back of your truck.
That's a good thing.
That's a plus. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really look forward to
Coming
those sort
coming
of things.
from the bomb expert.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I being on fire is not something I ever want to do again. I checked that block. I'm good. I don't need to do that
Take it off
anymore.
the bucket list.
Right. Yeah. It's done. That's checked. And that's your fuel and power plan.
Okay.
Now, part of your power, we also make sure that we've got alternate power packs and things like that. I've got a big, one of the big jump packs that also has a built-in air compressor and stuff
Cool.
on it. So yeah, so I can blow some foam into a tire that's leaking, and then I can just re-air it up right there. All
Nice.
right. They're not just for rafts and inner tubes anymore.
Yeah, we carry them in our trucks as well. So we've
Yeah.
got like I think I don't remember the brand, but a J3000. It's got something like 3,000 cranking amps, and
Yeah.
then it's also got the air pump for the tires and whatnot.
Yeah.
Pretty slick, pretty slick device,
Yeah, they're worth it. They're just worth it. I mean, they get in the way. It's a pain in the butt, but man, when you need it, it's worth it.
Hey,
It's really worth it.
I've got an 82K 24x4 with 16 inches of lift. It's more of a hobby truck than anything, and it sat for quite a while. And it's got a high compression, high performance motor in it. And that little handheld sucker, turn it over and fire it up right away.
Yep. It's a good way to go.
Well, there's another interesting point to that. So um, we've got a couple Escalades, and we had one of them wouldn't start, and AAA showed up. And I'm not sure what they did wrong, but they fried all the electronics in one of our brand new Escalades. And yeah, polarity reversed. That's what we suspect, but we couldn't prove it,
Yeah.
sort of thing, right? So it took out the entire fuse panel. There was another switch directly behind the battery, and that truck had nothing but electrical gremlins after that. And that little jump starter deal, it actually has a reverse polarity check on it, where it just
Yeah.
trips basically an interrupt switch.
Oh, they're great. They're great. I love
I
them.
I would
Yeah.
not connect any of these modern vehicles with all these computers to another vehicle at all.
Yeah.
The handheld one's the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I've also got I also carry a small solar panel pack just in
Cool.
case I wind up needing it, but it's
Yep.
there for power. Power is not just for jumping your truck.
We've got one that we're fixing to send JJ. So that power station there is sitting on top of a fold up 40-watt solar panel. It's 10 inches by 10 inches by 20 millimeters, so less than an inch. And it's a really cool little deal.
Oh yeah.
Like I say, JJ's going to take it. He's going to do a big trip between him and Jason Sawyer, meeting up in the middle of Georgia.
Yeah.
And that'll give him the ability for a multi-day, big mile trip on his e-bike.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They'll do it justice.
That's awesome.
Okay, so moving along. We're gonna move along. Okay, so next I got a comms plan. Of course, comms is always Pace. We're running handheld FM radios as our primary for just chatting. Yes.
So for the people who don't know what it stands for, PACE.
Right. Okay, so a PACE plan is a military acronym for virtually all of your plans that are going to have multiple layers. So PACE stands for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency.
Awesome.
Okay. So yeah, that's how a PACE plan works. And you have that every item in a plan that is going to be fragile, like comms, right?
Yeah.
Anything that's potentially going to be fragile, PACE plan it. Everything like that. Yeah,
Cool.
always. So primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency.
So speaking of radios, like what would you recommend? Like a Baofeng UV5R for $30, or you think of something?
So personally,
Yeah.
we use I do have Baofangs, right? And in this case, I'm gonna use them on this one. I use the UV82s.
Okay.
And I get them either from B Tech or Merkit.
Gotcha.
And the reason that I get them from those guys is because they import whatever radios they do. They import them by the container load. All right. And then they take them into their facility and they strip them down here in the US. First thing they do is completely strip out the Chinese firmware out of them. They strip it out.
Okay.
Replace it with clean firmware from here, and they test all of the circuitry, and virtually every one of them they wind up pulling out resistors and stuff like that and replacing them out, because you get a lot of bad hardware on the stuff that just comes straight from Beifang. Okay. You actually get a lot of bad stuff there. So they rebuild them, they upgrade the seals on them, and it costs you a little bit more. I mean, I'm paying like I paid like $26-27 a piece for those radios, right? I like the UV82 because I can run a primary frequency and an alternate frequency at the same time. So I can talk one and I can monitor the other.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. And for command and control purposes, that's a thing. Right. That is a big thing. Also, if you can have the same frequency on both of those, have one high power, have one low power. Talk on your low power whenever you can talk on those. Talk on a high power if you have to.
Interesting.
Okay. And that's part of your ComSec. So communication security, you always want to be on the lowest power possible. So they're decent radios. Are they great radios? No. Would I rather be running Motorola's with frequency hopping capability? Yeah. Do I have the money for that? No. Okay. The Baofangs are a great place to start.
Okay.
Don't wrap your head around those. All right. Work with them. Learn how to run radios. Learn how to do things with the radio. But assume that you're going to wind up purchasing a better quality radio at some point. Okay. So invest in it.
What would the threshold be? Like, I mean, obviously Harris military grade, we can't own them, and they're however many $10,000, $15,000, $20,000
Yeah,
radios.
yeah.
But where's the threshold between like these cheap radios and something that's in a a noticeable class better?
So the quality of radios has improved dramatically, and the quality of the technology and stuff, it gets smaller, it gets better all the time. So I would say personally, once you exceed $200 to $300 on a radio quality, now you're getting into the good stuff. Okay,
Gotcha.
you're getting into you're getting into decent ICOMs. You're getting into decent Yaesus. You're
Okay.
getting into the low end Motorola's, things like that. All
Okay.
right. Even the low end Motorola's are still better than the best Bayfongs out there. We'll just,
Gotcha.
let's not be foolish about it. Let's just go
Fair
ahead
enough.
and say, yeah, okay. But yeah, I don't want to beat that dead horse too bad,
No
but
problem.
have decent radios, have good quality radios. But you got to begin somewhere.
Okay.
A a marginal radio is better than no radio.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, the one thing that I made sure to do on my radios, though, and this was a thing back in the day, having a handheld radio and no way to charge the damn thing in the field.
Yeah.
I swear to God, we actually did an exercise, and I had to have one of the little desk chargers to put my stupid radio into to charge it in the field. That's awful.
So that's interesting. I was watching somebody's channel, can't remember who it was for the life of me. And the first generation of these TIDs had a whole bunch of problems. But the second generation, and this is a guy who's a subject matter expert on this stuff, supposedly fixed all those deficiencies. And I'm looking for the port on here, but suffice it to say, one of the things that appealed to me on this is that you can charge it up with a USB-C cable,
Right.
and you don't need a cradle or anything to set it in.
Right.
So by the time you take the antenna off, and no cradle, just a USB cable, pretty compact.
Yep.
The features so far on this are actually pretty good. I think it's about a $60 radio, but the battery won't hold charge like a Baofeng will.
Right. So I got the upgraded long batteries for mine, but I also got the upgraded long batteries that have the barrel connection on the bottom that I can
Okay,
just plug straight into any USB port out there.
right on.
And they're lithium ion, they're 3000 milliamp hour on those things. They do a good job. They last very well for a very long time. I also upgraded my antennas and put
3,000 milliamp hours is darn near the size of a small laptop battery.
yeah.
Like that'll
Yeah.
keep your radio running for a long time.
Oh yeah, unless you're on high power and talking a lot.
Okay,
And then yeah, that'll suck your battery dry quick, fast, and in a
fair
hurry.
enough.
But I also replaced all my antennas because the rubber ducky antennas that come with most cheap radios are pretty well garbage. Yes, and I use the Abri battery or the Abri
So
antennas, but is that a flat pack antenna?
yeah, so I could
Yes.
take it and I
Yes.
fold it up so that it doesn't get hooked on stuff if I have
Right.
it on a
The,
rig or
the
anything.
the flat pack antennas are the way to go. Absolutely.
Weighs nothing. You can make it compact. And this is a
Hmm.
B-Tech that our friend Tyler White recommended that I have a
Right.
look at.
Yeah. So
It's he's obviously at a really high level, right? I
oh
mean,
yeah.
he's a comms guy.
Right.
So he knows how to use every aspect of this. This makes me look like a complete amateur.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, upgrading it to digital and stuff like because that's a digital set
Correct.
right there.
Yes.
And B-Tech does good stuff, man. And B-Tech is Baofeng tech. So what they're
Right.
doing is they start with baseline Baofeng stuff, and
Yeah.
they just have way better quality control
Right.
over everything else. And quality control is the biggest problem that you have with that stuff. But yeah, upgrading your batteries, upgrading your antennas, man, it gets you a long ways with that kind of stuff. And I mean, I've even got the vehicle mounts where I can just drop my radio into a cradle in my truck.
Yep.
It's got power coming from the truck. It's got an antenna that's outside my truck. Done and done.
Awesome.
And heck, I even also, and I got to mount the thing tomorrow, and I'm not looking forward to this. I got a cell booster antenna.
Okay.
to mount onto my truck as well. So that's gonna be a big bonus when you start losing cell service in a lot of these remote areas. The
For
ability
sure.
to be able to still have cell service is a nice thing.
Absolutely.
Security plan. Security plan is a thing, right? And we're not going to talk about specifics, but you need to have the items as necessary for security. And if you're like we're convoying on our way out there, we've already discussed, okay, who's runner and who's blocker. And we've determined, okay, if one of us gets stopped, what's going to be the SOP for the other one coming back to get you?
Standard operating procedure for those people who don't
Right.
know that acronym.
Standard operating procedures. Right. Exactly. Food and water plan. Move to a food and water plan. We always carry 5 to 10 gallons of water per vehicle. Always.
It's a lot.
Right. I carry a couple of jerry cans, period.
Nice.
Because if you get a big hole knocked through your radiator, the thing is going to suck water. You can only plug it so much, right?
Yeah.
And if you got to limp 100 miles on a Catholic radiator, because it's holy. If you got to limp that thing 100 miles, right? Yeah, then yeah, I mean, you're going to need a lot of extra water to do that. Plus, filters and dirty water bags, things like that. Shelter plan. Part of your shelter plan is going to be, what hotels are we going to stay at? We determine what RON we're going to have, right?
Okay.
And we got a nice little Super 8 in northern Missouri all picked out. That's going to be great. But at the same time, we also determine a couple of campground areas that we may just go ahead and crash at. If that doesn't work, now you're back down to your safe havens. You're down to looking at okay, where's a decent spot where I can get off the road, I can throw camo net over the truck, and I can throw out a hammock for a few hours, right, and try to get some sleep. All right, so that's your shelter plan.
So
heck, we even brought tents because of it's this time of year.
for sure. And thinking of people who live closer to their work. So I think the average American lives something like 15 miles
Right.
from their workplace. Still having some form of shelter is important if you have to abandon your vehicle for whatever reason.
Right.
So, I mean, all of us pretty much have USGI ponchos that, not only can function as a poncho, but can be a tent and whatnot.
Poncho comes in really handy. So for the folks that are, if you're in metro and suburban areas, right, urban and suburban, always remember the lessons that the homeless people give us. Okay, they're the ultimate survivors. Look at the lessons that you get from homeless people. Homeless people build shelter out of nothing.
Right.
You grab a couple sheets of cardboard to lay on. You put cardboard over the top of you. Congratulations! Now you have a shelter. Okay. There's also lots of abandoned or unoccupied buildings around.
Right.
Use what you got. Okay. If you don't have the material to do these sort of things, if you don't have a poncho with you, if anything like that, use what you got available. All right. It's you've got to be flexible in your thinking. Improvise, adapt, and overcome, kids.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but if you're in a hurry, shelter goes way down the list, right? Okay. If you're in a big hurry because of the scenario that you're in and you're like, I have got to get home and I've got to get home now, shelter is lower down on the list. All right. Because you're not going to be resting nearly as much.
Yep. Fair enough.
And shelter becomes the clothes on your back. Medical plan. Medical again needs to be commensurate with the skills that you have. Okay. I always scream at people, you need to have just as much medical training as any other training. That should be one of your top priorities because one, it keeps you from dying if possible. And for two, you can keep other people from dying. Yeah. It comes down to the mantra that we used to push at Crisis Application Group was first you learn to heal, then you can learn to harm.
Okay.
Period.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Because
if you have the tools to put holes in people, you should have the tools to stop the bleeding.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So carrying medical gear is a thing. And I don't care if it's just the starts of a little time, have a boo-boo kit and a tourniquet. Okay, that's everybody got to start somewhere. Carry some Band-Aids, right? I don't care. put a pack of My Little Pony pink ones into your pack. They're great. You know what? It's better than nothing.
Well, I love how JJ recently improvised with a Wazoo cash belt and used it as a tourniquet. Or maybe
I
it was
mean,
Jason Sawyer, but they do so much
yeah,
together, it's hard to keep track of. But
yeah. It's not a good tourniquet, but it might keep you from bleeding out.
all bleeding stops eventually,
Yeah, eventually. Yeah,
one way or
yeah.
the other.
Right, exactly. So these are the basic plans that I laid out on this whole thing. And then we get to pack out. For us, pack out is tomorrow. Now, your pack out may take 10 minutes. Okay. You may have your little bag that you carry as your emergency bag to
Mhm.
work back and forth every day. And you just got a little kit at the bottom of your bag that's part of your commute every day. Okay, that's fine. Me, man, I'm rolling heavy. Okay, I got a long ways to go, so I got a lot of things to pack out. Not only do I got to have a bunch of stuff for the job that we're going to go do, that's got to get packed out first, and it's going to all go to the front of the truck because I'm
Right.
not going to need to access that stuff until I get there. All right. But I suggest, of all things that you do, no matter what plan you have, I don't care if you're trying to get home 20 miles, right? Or 10 miles from the local Circle K that you're working at. I don't care. Okay. Or if you're going to be doing, that trip that you did from Seattle
Right.
all the way back to Florida. God, that gave me the willies looking at it.
Yeah.
All right. But you should have a tiered gear program. All of your gear should be layered out in tiers. Now, what do I mean by that? So in SOF, we used tiers, and you always lived off of the highest tier that you were in. So when you were in base camp, you lived out of your gear that was dedicated just to the base camp.
Okay.
Right? You had everything else, right? Now, from there, you move down to your vehicle gear. You live and you work and you subsist out of the gear in your vehicle. So if the vehicle goes bad, things go bad, you wind up having to displace out of that vehicle and leave that vehicle behind. All the gear that you've got in your pack, that's completely intact. Okay, because you've been living out of higher tiers.
Okay.
All right. And this is one of the big cornerstones of the SEER world. And
So
then yes.
for our audience who aren't familiar with SEER, the acronym
Sorry.
stands for
Sorry. SEER is the military's program for survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. Okay, it's the military survival school. And I would really like to go back after spending time with Tyler. I would really like to go back and find my SEER instructors and kick them all square in the crotch for teaching me the absolute hardest methods for, starting fires and doing things like that. Because I look, Tyler was like, okay, I know exactly where you picked that up, Mike. Stop, I'm going to show you an easier method. And he'd show me and I'd just be like, that's it, man, I'm mad now. So yeah, the cornerstone of the SEER world is always live out of the highest level of gear that you have, because that's the first layer that you're going to abandon
Okay.
if things go bad. So I'm working out of my base camp, right? Or my desk at work, right? And I've got to bail off that. I don't have to take that stuff with me. If I can take that stuff with me, that's a great thing. But if I have to bail now, then congratulations, that stuff stays there. It's not an issue. Okay. Because I still have multiple tiers from there. So next I've got my vehicle, and for my vehicle, I've got my pack. And if I have to drop my pack, I'm going to have a smaller rig. Like Tyler and I both use the Hill People Gear chest
Right
pouches,
on.
right?
Mhm.
I love them. I have a full mini kit inside my chest pouch. If I
Cool.
dump my pack, I can still survive based on what's in my chest pouch. I know some people that will do the bat belt method, right? And the bat belt method works fine. You just have a whole bunch of pouches and everything mounted onto your belt,
Right.
or you carry like a spare gun belt or something like that that's got all your gear on it. Whatever. I don't care if
Duty
it's a
belt.
fanny pack. Yeah, duty belt, a fanny pack, whatever. Okay, that's your next tier down. And
Okay.
then what's the bottom tier of that whole thing? What's in your pockets?
Yeah. EDC
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, you got your EDC. So you've got a bunch of stuff. You got snackies, you've got, you got some maps and things like that. You got all that crammed down inside your pockets and everything. Congratulations. If I've dumped everything else, I still got what's in my pockets.
Awesome.
Okay. Because we as humans are tool using animals.
Hmm.
Okay. Skill trumps gear all day, every day, but we're still tool using animals, and the tools give us options that our skills don't necessarily give us.
Good
Okay.
advice.
So, and then the next decision that you're going to wind up having to make is this going to be low vis or is this going to be overt? Now, if you're living in a metro and you want to just, man, you just want to get home, I got to go 10 miles across town and just get there. I'm schlepping it. Man, low vis is the way to go all day, every day. Absolutely. Right. But if you're in a situation, say there's 10 of you, okay, and you need to get home and you're going quite a ways, you may be in a situation where it may be smarter for you to project strength rather
Deter.
than fly under radar. I would prefer to fly under radar all day, every day. Okay. Showing up wearing, your camo and wearing chest rigs might be a little bit too high on the overt side. Okay. That's flying a little bit too high.
Right.
But if you just go open carry with everybody and you let it be known that you're not there to, you know, you're not going to be somebody's victim. You're not going to, you get stopped at one of these little checkpoints by Joe and Bubba down here who are thinking they're going to make a quick buck, and there's 10 of you and there's 2 of them, and they want to go through your stuff and take their tithe.
Mm.
Nah, man.
Right.
Nah, you're not doing that. Yeah. So, and that's where the overt comes in versus the covert. All right. Low vis is the way to go unless you're in a situation where you can be overt. Okay.
Time and a place for everything.
Right. There's a time and a place for everything, and
Yeah.
you've got to make the decisions based upon. Eh, Here's another acronym that I'm going to throw out there: METTC. All right. That's a military acronym for a lot of decision making, and that's mission, enemy, time, terrain, and civilians or community.
Okay.
All right. Those are the things that you need to bounce everything off of. All right. So alternate means of transportation. Man, I wish I had an e-bike for this trip. I would love to have an e-bike for this trip. I don't, like Mike was saying the other day, Mike Glover. He
Hmm.
had a great thing. He was like, yeah, he's like, I just started carrying motorcycles around for nothing but for my own enjoyment.
Right.
He says, and guess what? Now it's an alternate item for getting home with. Man, and that's a great idea. That is a
For sure.
great idea. They use them for recreation, but now one, they're getting the miles at them, so they're getting the experience with them. And two, you throw into that, now you've got them with you all the time.
Yeah.
All right. So motorcycles, e-bikes, a bicycle. Heck, I don't care if you scrounge a shopping cart at a certain point, or a little or God love it, a little Red Ryder wagon, whatever.
Right.
Okay. I can drop my pack into a Red Ryder wagon and walk down the highway with that and
Sure.
not feel bad about it at all. Yeah. So if you can take an alternate means of transportation with you, do so. If you can't,
Fair enough.
be prepared to get an alternate means of transportation.
So for your average guy, white collar job, works 15 miles from home, having a change of footwear and socks if he has to take the ankle express home.
Oh man, good footwear. Good footwear is a big thing because
Boy, howdy.
pounds make miles, miles make sore feet. And
Hmm.
I am here to tell you there's nothing in this world more degrading to your morale than bad feet.
For sure.
Yeah. Trying to do anything in dress shoes somewhere, forget it, man. I carry a spare pair of boots and smart wool socks with me everywhere I go.
Smart.
Yeah, everywhere I go. This kind of harkens back to the get home video that or the get home discussion that we had for when I was in New Orleans. The last point that I have in there and that I had to tell some people was be prepared to be disappointed in me because I'm about to go do some hood rat shit. I'm gonna go goon if it's time for me to get out of here, and we're up against you know, a timeline, and we got no vehicles, or there's a security issue. I'm gonna do some goon stuff. All right. So I like to maintain a certain moral flexibility.
Fair
If
enough.
for anybody who has seen Gross Point Blank, always a great line if you can, you know, throw that into there. Yeah, maintaining a certain moral flexibility. Now, I'm not gonna walk up on a van that's got, you know, a single mom and her 5 kids in it. I'm not gonna do that.
Right.
But you know what? If there's, you know, if there's cars stalled out or abandoned on the side of the road, yeah, I'm gonna scrounge fuel out of those. If I need to scrounge a tire, I'm gonna scrounge a tire.
Right on.
All right. I'm gonna do what I need to do. Now, I'm not gonna leave my morality behind, but I'm gonna be prepared to do what I need to do with minimal thinking about it.
Well, and the you know, badder elements of society, they're not going to hesitate to go way beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So if when the rule of law goes out the window, it's every man for himself, unfortunately.
Right. Right. Now, again, maintain a hook in your morality. All right.
Right.
Not saying go out and just start stealing,
For sure.
looting, pillaging, plundering. Whew. Can we find a monastery somewhere? Anyway, sorry, Viking came out on me, but you got to be prepared to do what you got to do, and that is a mindset. Period.
Sure.
That is a mindset. You've got to put that mindset in place, and you've got to be honest with yourself about that mindset up front.
Yep. Valid point.
Yep. And that is my planning process for this.
So I mean, it's going to be really interesting to hear, you know, what happens on your trip there, what happens on your trip back.
Oh yeah.
Whether there's an SHTF event or not, when you travel 1,500 miles, stuff will happen. You will have some stories from this trip.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm gonna get a lot of good clips for when we're out there. I've got a couple of safe havens lined up with some great options for those safe havens. So we're going to do some good stuff. I've got some friends that are going to throw in on this, or we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So anyway, Mike, as per usual, appreciate all the insight and truths that you dropped on us today. And when are you leaving for Wyoming again?
Day after tomorrow.
That's what I thought. All right. So this video will air after you've left, but
oh yeah,
safe travels. Make sure you come back safely to Survival Dispatch. We wouldn't know what to do without you.
Absolutely. I'm going to do my absolute best not to get blowed up.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Everybody stay safe out there. Like, subscribe, hit that bell.